Hey brothers, today I want to talk about the overturning of the separate but equal policy in the United States and why I can't exactly wrap my head around the rationale of doing so. So in case you have absolutely no idea whatsoever what I'm talking about, I'll give you a little background knowledge. The American Civil War resulted in the emancipation of all slaves in the United States. And you can obviously imagine most of the slave population was concentrated down in the South. And you can also imagine that former slave owners and people who just saw blacks as slaves didn't necessarily want to live with them, didn't necessarily want to see them every day on their commute to work. So the idea of separate but equal is we separate the ethnic groups. We separate whites from blacks so they don't have to intermingle because there was hostility there. It's a way to prevent hostility between whites and blacks. Only blacks can drink at this water fountain, only whites can drink at this water fountain, only blacks can ride this bus, only whites can ride this bus. The idea is to separate us so nothing happens, so no harmful things happen between us, so long as we receive the same amount of public funding. But as you can obviously imagine, whites ended up getting more public funding, which isn't a real big shocker. So the thing I don't understand about separate but equal is two parts. Separate, keeping blacks and whites separate, and equal, giving blacks and whites the same amount of funding. It's a two-part plan. But what I don't understand is why the Supreme Court chose to overturn separate but equal as a whole when the only part of the plan that was being disobeyed was the equal part. Equality was the issue. The Supreme Court would have been much better off to just give more funding or demand more funding be given to black public services, but rather they overturned it as a whole and forced us to come together to desegregate, which doesn't make much sense because segregation wasn't the problem, equality was. Of course, you could use the argument, well, Robert, doesn't it make more sense that we desegregate? Because if we didn't, we'd have to pump more money into black public funding, and that would put a bigger dent in our budget. And you're not necessarily correct there. Let's say we have a hypothetical city, 100 black people, 100 white people. There's one water fountain to one person. And the condition of said water fountain depends on the person's race. White people have top-notch water fountains, best money can buy. Black people have disgustingly broken water fountains that spit mud. When you desegregate, the blacks are going to want to use historically white water fountains because they work, because they're cleaner. And when whites want to go get a drink, their water fountains are always going to be clogged. So what are they going to do? They're going to go to the black people's water fountains, and they're not going to like them. They're going to be spitting dirt. They're going to petition the government to remove them and put new water fountains in that are cleaner so they can use them communally. You're not saving money either way. Likewise, I can give an example with public transportation. Let's say in our city of 100 white people, 100 black people, the whites have 10 beautiful buses. The blacks have 10 ugly, torn up, beat up buses. When you desegregate, blacks are going to start wanting to use the white buses because they're actually nice and not pieces of shit. And white people who are used to nice, high-end stuff that actually works are going to be forced to ride black buses because white buses are going to be full. And the white people aren't going to like the black beat-up buses, so they're going to petition the government to remove the buses or to fix the buses up. So no, you're not saving any money. If you desegregate, money is going to be spent on fixing up black people stuff so it can be used communally as a whole. If you don't desegregate, you're going to spend money on fixing up black people stuff so they can truly be equal. You're not saving any money either way. You're spending the same amount of money in both. My overarching message in this entire video is I don't understand why separate but equal was removed as a whole when equality was the only issue. The Supreme Court should have instead ruled to just pump more money into black public services because then separate but equal would be true in name. Their logic is, let's say you have two sons, one is named separate, one is named equal. Equal starts acting up, so to make it right, you beat separate. That makes no sense whatsoever. Overturning separate but equal was a huge mistake. I live in the South. I can tell you firsthand, blacks hate us, and we hate blacks. We don't like living next to them. They don't like living next to us. There's a lot of tension to this day. we're not the same. We're different people. We don't mix well. But that's something that the Supreme Court failed to take into account when they overturned separate but equal as a whole. We're not meant to be together. And before you go down to the comments and start saying, oh, you're a racist, oh, you're a race baiter, I'd like to clear a couple things up. First of all, I'm not a racist. I don't hate blacks as a whole. What I hate is the Supreme Court's idiotic decision to overturn separate but equal when there was an easier solution that they could have chosen. Instead, they chose to desegregate us, and look at the impact that's had. If you don't live in the South, you won't understand. In my city, almost weekly, white kids who are just out walking around on their bike playing fucking Pokemon Go are beaten up by black gangs. There is gang violence against whites. Whites are targeted because of our skin color. This is reverse racism. Look at Black Lives Matter. Their entire message is anti-white. They hate us. And do we not have a right to hate them back when they go out and they beat up our kids? No. The desegregation of society ultimately led to this chaos, and the Supreme Court won't address it. But at the end of the day, who am I but some crazy racist redneck on the internet who tells kids to kill themselves? Until next time, this is the American Traditionalist.